So, what do you both think about our request earlier? Mr. Jeon, Jungkook's father, asked the two young people who had fallen silent after hearing about their arranged engagement. Yin, sweetheart, what do you think? Mrs. Park gently asked her daughter, who was still looking down. A pang of guilt struck her. She hadn't asked for Yin's opinion before. Perhaps for Yin, this was all too sudden. But for Mrs. Park and Jungkook's parents, this engagement had been planned for a long time. All eyes were now on Yin. The beautiful girl who had just entered her second year of university was naturally confused by the question. Her parents and Jungkook's parents were close friends and longtime business partners who benefited from each other. Meanwhile, Yin and Jungkook attended the same university, but were in different majors. Jungkook studied business, while Yin was in fine arts. On campus, they weren't close. They ignored each other. Jungkook was a handsome, ruthless, and highly respected student. His father owned the university's foundation. Meanwhile, Yin was a quiet and shy beauty. She wasn't the type to stand out, though many admired her. Biting her lower lip nervously, Yin softly said, "I'll follow whatever my parents decide." As an obedient daughter, Yin always listened to her parents. After all, they only wanted what was best for her. She believed they had thought this through. Mr. Park, Yin's father, stroked his daughter's head. "Are you sure you want to leave this decision to us, sweetheart? You're allowed to have your own opinion. We'll listen." Yin shook her head slightly and lifted her gaze. But as soon as her eyes met Jungkook's piercing stare, she quickly looked down again. "I trust my dad and mom. You've always done what's best for me." Jungkook scoffed. Yin was too naive. Since the idea of engagement had been proposed by their parents, Jungkook had remained silent, irritated that his parents hadn't consulted him first. After all, it was he and Yin who would have to live with this decision. Mr. Park and his wife exchanged glances and smiled. Yin, their only daughter, had always been spoiled. They gave her everything she wanted, as long as it was for her well-being. That was why she was so obedient. Her compliance was a sign of gratitude and respect toward her parents. Mrs. Jeon smiled, pleased. She had set her sights on Yin for a long time, believing that Yin's gentle nature was the perfect match for her cold-hearted son. She hoped Yin could bring warmth to Jungkook's heart. "Good, that means Yin has agreed," she said before turning to her son, who had maintained a blank expression the entire time. "Jungkook, what about you?" she asked expectantly. Jungkook straightened his back, scanning the faces in the room before finally stopping at Yin. To his surprise, she was actually looking at him, something she rarely did. Slightly furrowing his brows, he cleared his throat. It was time to speak his mind. "Isn't it too soon to be discussing marriage?" Jungkook said seriously. "We're only in our second year. We have a long way to go. Instead of focusing on our studies, we'd be dealing with a marriage. That would be troublesome." He sighed heavily. "Sorry, but I refuse." His rejection made Yin lower her head again. Moments ago, she had anxiously awaited his response, hoping for a yes, but now, disappointment settled in her chest. "Jungkook, can't you reconsider?" "No, Dad, I've thought about it." Jungkook's firm gaze met his father's. Mr. Jeon saw too much of himself in his son. They were alike in many ways. But Mrs. Jeon wasn't willing to let this meeting go to waste. She was determined to see Jungkook and Yin engaged. "Jungkook, we're not asking you to get married right away. We know you both are still in university. We just want you and Yin to be engaged. Once you graduate, then you can marry." "That's right," Mr. Jeon added. "This engagement is just to create a bond between you two. We're not forcing you to marry immediately. Just get to know each other first." Jungkook exhaled slowly. "Then why not just get engaged later when we're about to marry?" "If that's the case, then why bother with an engagement? You might as well marry immediately after graduation," his mother countered, trying to keep her temper in check. "What's your real issue, Jungkook? Do you already have a girlfriend?" "Of course not," Jungkook answered without hesitation. Many girls liked him, but he hadn't considered anyone as a potential wife. "But what if the university finds out about our engagement?" he asked, grasping for an excuse. "Is there a rule against engaged students?" Mr. Jeon asked, raising a brow. "If you've forgotten, the university belongs to our family. I never made such a rule." Jungkook sighed. He was out of arguments. The truth was, he simply didn't want to deal with a relationship right now. "Jungkook, think this through," Mrs. Jeon urged. "Yin has already agreed. Your dad, I, and Yin's parents all support this. The engagement won't interfere with your studies. You two will support each other. Trust me." Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. It wasn't that he disliked Yin. She was decent. In fact, she met his criteria for an ideal wife: beautiful, intelligent, obedient, and well-mannered. He was a dominant man. He had no interest in stubborn women who resisted authority. But this engagement felt too soon. Yet, looking at all the hopeful faces around him, he couldn't bring himself to reject them again. He was cold-hearted but not heartless enough to disappoint his loved ones. Alright, I agree. Relief filled the room as their parents smiled in satisfaction. Even Yin, though quiet, felt the corners of her lips lift slightly. But deep inside, an ache settled in her heart. Jungkook initially refused. That meant he was only agreeing out of obligation, not because he wanted to. He didn't like her. That was what Yin believed. The engagement will take place in 2 weeks. Since you're both still in university, we'll keep it small, just family and close friends. Is that okay? Yes, uncle, that's fine. We agree. The rest of the conversation revolved around planning their engagement, with Mrs. Park and Mrs. Jeon leading the discussion, while their husbands simply followed their wives' wishes. Jungkook, Mrs. Park called gently as they were about to leave. Yes, Andy? She gave him a soft smile, her eyes filled with hope. Thank you. Please take care of Yin, she said quietly. I'm sorry, it's not my place to say this before you're married, but I have no one else I can trust to look after her except you. Jungkook was taken aback. The weight of their trust in him was overwhelming. A hint of guilt crept into his heart as he remembered how he had initially rejected the engagement. I will, Auntie. I'll take care of her. Yin glanced once more at the ring wrapped around her ring finger, a silver band with a small, sparkling diamond. She still couldn't believe that just 2 days ago, she had officially become Jungkook's fiance. Never in her life had she imagined being engaged to the cold-hearted man. To her, Jungkook was too indifferent, especially for someone like her, who could be a little childish at times. But fate had other plans. It would be a lie to say that Yin wasn't attracted to Jungkook. He was the definition of a picture-perfect boyfriend, but that was all. She expected nothing more. Letting out a heavy sigh, Yin started to reflect. Even though Jungkook never explicitly said he wanted to keep their engagement a secret on campus, his reaction back then was enough for Yin to understand that he didn't want anyone to know. Having a fiance but not being able to show him off, Yin chuckled bitterly. Feels like I'm being ignored. She sighed again before standing in front of the mirror and brushing her long hair. She was all dressed up and ready for campus. But it's fine. Better than making him angry if people find out. Not to mention, I'm not ready to deal with Jungkook's fangirls. She shuddered at the thought. Yin took one last look at herself and smiled faintly. She was ready for the day. Yin's and Jungkook's faculty buildings were right next to each other, so it wasn't unusual for them to run into each other at the cafeteria, which was located between the 2 buildings. If you ask me, Yin is getting prettier, said Minju, one of Jungkook's friends. Yin, that fine arts major? Yoonwoo followed Minju's gaze. You're right, she's glowing more these days, he chuckled. A pretty girl like that. I wonder if she has a boyfriend? Minju mused, sipping his apple juice while still watching Yin, who was laughing softly with her friend, Mina. No idea. Yoonwoo shrugged. As far as I know, she's shy and quiet. I've never seen her close to any guys, even though plenty of them like her. What a waste if she doesn't have a boyfriend. Maybe I should try courting her? Minju grinned. You're welcome to try, but you'll probably get rejected. Yoonwoo smirked. Even the captain of the basketball team, Jaehyun, got turned down. What makes you think you stand a chance? Minju scowled and threw a French fry at Yoonwoo. Screw you. It was true. Yin rejecting Jaehyun had shocked the whole campus. No girl had ever resisted Jaehyun's charm before. He was considered the second most handsome guy on campus, right after Jungkook. Jungkook, what do you think about Yin? Minju suddenly asked. Jungkook, who had been quietly listening, looked up. He didn't show any interest in their conversation, but he had definitely been paying attention whenever Yin was mentioned. She's alright, he answered casually. His hand instinctively reached for the necklace around his neck, where his engagement ring was hidden as a pendant. No one had noticed. Yoonwoo scoffed. You're asking the wrong person. Jungkook doesn't care about girls, he joked before smirking. Or maybe, he just doesn't like girls at all. Jungkook shot him a sharp glare, making Yoonwoo quickly wave his hands in surrender. Kidding? But seriously, you never get close to any girls. Yeah, watch him suddenly drop a wedding invitation out of nowhere. That would be such a jerk move, Minju muttered. Jungkook merely shrugged. He had no interest in sharing his love life with anyone. Once again, His eyes drifted to Yin. He still wasn't sure how to act around his fiancée. Who are you looking at? Yin asked Mina. Mina gestured with her chin. That. Yin followed her gaze and for a brief moment, locked eyes with Jungkook before quickly looking away. She hadn't realized they were in the same cafeteria. Jungkook, what about him? Yin asked in a hushed tone. Mina sighed, stirring her noodles. I'm just curious about the kind of girl who can tame someone as cold as him. Yin immediately choked on her food, coughing as she grabbed her drink and took big gulps. Mina stared at her in confusion. Geez, Yin, slow down. I wasn't going to steal your drink, she teased. Yin closed her eyes, trying to regain her composure. She had been caught off guard by Mina's words. She licked her lips, which were burning from the spicy broth, and muttered, Why are you so curious? Because, Mina exclaimed, he's the most handsome guy on campus, smart, and the son of the university's owner. So many girls have tried to get close to him, but none of them succeeded. Then, lowering her voice, she added, unless, do you think he's actually gay? Is that why he never shows interest in any girl? Don't talk nonsense. Yin quickly shut her down. How dare she say that about her fiancé? That kind of rumor could cause problems if he hears it. Mina winced. Right, Jungkook is kind of scary. I wouldn't want to be on his bad side, she muttered. Still, I'm curious. Yin shook her head at her friend's endless curiosity. Mina's eyes then landed on Yin's hand, where a shiny ring rested on her finger. Her eyes widened. Yin, you're wearing a ring? Since when? Yin flinched. She hadn't expected Mina to notice so soon. Since yesterday, she answered nervously. Mina squinted at her, her suspicion growing. That ring is gorgeous. It looks like an engagement ring. Yin panicked internally. It wasn't that she didn't want to tell Mina, but she knew Jungkook wanted their engagement to stay a secret. She had to think fast. It's not. Yin forced a smile. My mom gave it to me. She said it would keep random guys from bothering me. It looks like an engagement ring on purpose. Mina studied the ring again, still feeling a bit skeptical, but seeing how Yin seemed unwilling to explain further, she let it go. They were best friends, but even best friends had boundaries. If Yin didn't want to talk about it, Mina wouldn't force her. Oh, then take me to that store sometime. I want one too. It's so pretty. Yin let out a small laugh. She had no idea where Jungkook bought the ring, but she had to admit, it was beautiful, simple, yet elegant. Class had ended, but Yin remained in the art classroom. There were still a few details in her painting that she needed to finish. Mina had already left for the cafeteria with their other friends, saying she was too hungry to wait for Yin. Yin had simply agreed. She didn't want to hear Mina whining. The sound of raindrops made Yin look up. The sky was quite dark despite it only being 1 p.m. The classroom, located in a secluded corner, meant that not many students passed by. Her thoughts about the rain were interrupted when someone entered the room. Professor Bongho, Yin greeted, bowing politely. Professor Bongho nodded and smiled. You haven't gone home yet? Not yet, Professor. I still need to finish this, Yin replied. She found it odd that the highly respected professor had suddenly come to her class, especially since he wasn't scheduled to teach today. Is there something you need, Professor? She asked, making small talk, afraid of seeming rude. Professor Bongho approached, his gaze fixed on Yin, making her feel an immediate sense of unease. No, just happened to pass by and saw you here, so I decided to come in. Yin nodded, unsure of how to respond. She quickly packed up her painting supplies, realizing she had finished. I'm done, Professor. I'll be leaving now. However, Professor Bongho stood in front of the door, making it difficult for Yin to pass. Excuse me, Professor, she said again, a growing fear creeping up inside her as she noticed the unusual way he was looking at her. Wait a moment. He stopped her. Why the rush? Stay with me a little longer, he said, licking his lower lip while scanning Yin from head to toe. Instinctively, she clutched her jacket tightly around herself. Stay. For what? Yin asked warily, her hands clenching into fists. She had seen enough movies and dramas to understand the meaning behind that look, but she tried to think positively. This was a respected professor on campus. He wouldn't do anything inappropriate, right? It's raining outside. Wouldn't it be better if we warmed each other up? Professor Bongho grinned. There's no one here but us, so we can do whatever we want, he whispered. Yin flinched and stepped back as he advanced. Professor, you must be drunk, she said hesitantly. Looking behind her, she cursed inwardly. She had nowhere left to retreat. Professor Bongho chuckled. Yes, I am drunk. Drunk on you. He stood right in front of her, leaning in. "Park Yin, you're truly captivating," he murmured with desire. Yin tried to push him away, but he swiftly grabbed her wrist and kissed her hand. His gaze made her stomach churn with disgust. This was no longer the professor she had once respected. "Professor, this is wrong. Let me go." Yin struggled, trying to free herself from his grip. "Let you go?" he mocked. "Never. I've been obsessed with beautiful students like you for so long. You're the perfect fantasy I imagine every night. You're flawless, Yin." Professor Bongho pinned her against the wall, his eyes dark with intent. Yin's tears fell. She hated this, hated feeling powerless. She fought back, but her strength wasn't enough. Even screaming felt useless against the sound of heavy rain. "Let me go, Professor. Let me go." "Keep struggling, Yin. It only excites me more," he whispered, closing in on her. He managed to steal a kiss on her right cheek. That was the last straw. Yin forcefully slammed her forehead against his face, causing his nose to bleed. He groaned in pain. Summoning every ounce of courage and strength, Yin kicked him hard in the groin, making him stumble backward. "Damn it, what the hell, Yin?" Professor Bongho clutched himself in agony. Seeing her chance, Yin immediately ran out. "Remember this, Yin. No matter what, I'll come after you. I will have you." Yin ignored his shouts. She ran as fast as she could out of the classroom, glancing over her shoulder in fear that the disgusting professor was chasing after her. Her mind was in turmoil. She was terrified. Her whole body trembled, gripped by overwhelming panic. The hallway was nearly empty, likely because most students were in the cafeteria enjoying hot meals in the rainy weather. Yin felt a slight relief as she reached an area where more students were present. She slowed down, trying to catch her breath. With her head down, she kept walking. Her face was surely a mess now. People gave her puzzled looks, and a few students asked if she was okay, but she ignored them. Eventually, she stopped in front of the business class, Jungkook's class. She didn't know why she had come here instead of just going home to calm herself down. She needed someone, and her heart had led her here. Jungkook's class was still noisy. The professor hadn't arrived yet. Yin's vision blurred as she spotted her fiance sitting in the corner with his friends. The once lively room suddenly fell silent when a girl from the fine arts department unexpectedly entered. Every pair of eyes turned to her, including Jungkook's. Yin looked disheveled, her face pale, eyes red, and body trembling slightly. Her pupils were dilated as if she had just gone through something terrifying. Without stopping, she walked straight toward Jungkook. Jungkook immediately stood up. Something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked softly when Yin finally stood before him. Yin lifted her head, and fresh tears fell from her eyes. What happened next shocked the entire class even more. Without warning, without caring about anyone around them, Yin threw herself into Jungkook's arms, hugging him tightly. Her firm grip on his back made Jungkook freeze in place. The entire class gawked, unable to believe what they were witnessing. And what was even more shocking, Jungkook didn't push her away. Even though his body stiffened in surprise, he didn't try to pull away from her. Instead, one of his hands hesitantly reached up, awkwardly stroking her head. Whispers filled the room. "What the hell is this? Isn't Jungkook the type who hates being close to girls? What's their relationship?" Jungkook ignored them all. His focus was solely on the girl in his arms. Her shoulders rose and fell as she took uneven breaths, her body trembling against him. He could feel Yin clutching onto him tightly, as if he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Jungkook knew something had happened to her, something bad. The room grew even quieter. Those watching exchanged glances, trying to make sense of the unusual scene unfolding before them. "Jungkook," Yin's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. No answer, only the tightening of her embrace, as if she was afraid that if she let go, her world would collapse. Jungkook let Yin hold onto him, feeling her trembling against him. When he sensed that she had calmed down a little, he slowly pulled away. "Do you want to talk outside?" he asked softly. Gasps of surprise spread through the room. Jungkook was never this gentle with anyone, especially a girl. Yin nodded weakly. Seeing this, Jungkook gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. He gently took her hand and led her out of the classroom. "Oi, Jungkook, where are you going?" Minju called out. Jungkook didn't answer. He simply walked away with long strides, his grip on Yin's wrist firm but careful. Yin didn't resist. She let Jungkook take her away. Even when curious stares followed them down the hallway, she didn't care. Right now, she only needed one thing. And that was Jungkook. Oh my god, was that really Jungkook? Yoonwoo asked in disbelief, echoed by their other classmates, who were still struggling to process what they had just seen. Jungkook led Yin to a quieter corner, away from prying eyes. They sat side by side on the staircase, and Jungkook observed her face, still visibly shaken. Here, drink this. Jungkook offered a bottle of water, its seal already broken. Before coming here, they had stopped by a vending machine to buy drinks. Thank you, Yin muttered, giving a small smile before taking it. Jungkook watched her closely from the side. With this close distance, he could clearly see her delicate features. His hand lifted instinctively, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. The simple gesture made Yin turn to him, their gazes meeting. Are you ready to talk? Jungkook asked gently. Yin nodded. The memory of what had happened earlier resurfaced, causing her body to tremble again. I was alone in the art classroom. She started hesitantly, her voice unsteady. I was finishing my painting. Then suddenly, Professor Bongho came in. Professor Bongho? Jungkook echoed. Yes, he's one of the most respected art professors. Yin glanced at Jungkook. Seeing him nod, she continued. At first, I didn't suspect anything. I just thought it was odd that he came to see me, saying it was by chance. Her voice wavered. Jungkook, sensing her distress, gently took her hand. Then he came closer, Yin stammered, struggling to piece her words together through fear. He cornered me until I couldn't escape. Jungkook's grip on her hand tightened. He almost did something horrible to me. Jungkook. Yin's voice broke as a heartbreaking sob escaped her lips. She buried her face in her hands. He touched me and kissed my cheek, she admitted, her voice small and fragile, like a child confessing a nightmare. Luckily, before it got any worse, I managed to escape. Jungkook stiffened, his body going rigid, his fists clenched tightly, veins protruding. His chest burned with rage. The mere thought of someone treating Yin like that made his blood boil. Anger surged through him, a violent storm brewing inside. That bastard, Jungkook muttered under his breath, his jaw tightening. But Yin couldn't continue. Her sobs grew louder, her whole body trembling. Jungkook shut his eyes for a moment, trying to contain his rising fury. Then, without hesitation, he reached for her, pulling her into a firm embrace. Her sobs sent sharp pains through his heart. Shh, it's okay, Yin, he whispered, his voice soft but steady. You're safe now. I'm here. He kept whispering reassuring words, holding her close, waiting until she finally calmed down, even just a little. Releasing his embrace, Jungkook gazed at Yin's tear-streaked face. He gently wiped away the tears trailing down her cheeks. Feeling better? He asked softly. Yin exhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. A little. But what if he tries to do something to me again? He said he wouldn't let me go. I won't let that happen, Jungkook responded immediately. His voice was firm, unwavering. Anyone who dares to touch what's mine will face the consequences, he muttered under his breath. Yin frowned slightly, not quite catching his last words. Jungkook simply smiled and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Do you want to go home now? Yin nodded. I'll call you on to drive you home, Jungkook said while quickly typing on his phone, sending a message to one of his family's chauffeurs. You're still shaken up. It's dangerous to drive alone in this condition, he explained when he noticed the confused look on Yin's face. Sorry, I can't take you home myself. There's something I need to handle. What is it? It's something, Jungkook answered vaguely, making Yin frown even more. Jungkook chuckled softly. Don't overthink it. Just rest as soon as you get home. Let me know when you arrive safely. Yin blinked, momentarily stunned. This was the longest sentence Jungkook had ever spoken to her. Her heart warmed. Maybe Jungkook wasn't as cold as he seemed. Uncle. Jungkook's flat voice pulled Gyujin's attention away from his glowing laptop screen. Gyujin was Jungkook's father's younger brother, and his father had entrusted him with the position of rector at this university. Jungkook, this is unusual, Gyujin said, removing his glasses and motioning for Jungkook to sit. What brings you here? I want you to fire Professor Bongho, the fine arts lecturer. Gyujin blinked in surprise. What? Why? He's an exemplary professor with an outstanding reputation. What reason do I have to fire him? Jungkook scoffed, his cold gaze locking onto Gyujin. The memory of Yin's tear-streaked face replayed in his mind, fueling his rage. What good is an achievement if his morals are rotten? He snapped. Gyujin frowned, even more confused now. Explain it to me clearly. I can't just fire someone without a solid reason, he said seriously. Jungkook clenched his jaw, his voice filled with unrestrained fury. That bastard. He has done something despicable to my fiancé. Gyujin's eyes widened in shock. What? Did he harass Yin? How is that possible? Jungkook proceeded to recount everything Yin had told him earlier that day. Gyujin listened in silence, his face growing darker with every word. When Jungkook finished, Gyujin exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. I never expected Professor Bonho to be this vile, he muttered in disbelief. Alright, I'll fire him. Fortunately for us, there's CCTV in the fine arts classroom. We can check the footage now. Gyujin quickly accessed the security system on his phone, rewinding the footage to the exact time of the incident. As the video played, Jungkook's heartbeat thundered in his ears. His breathing turned ragged. His blood boiled. He was furious. How dare that filthy man touch Yin with those disgusting hands and lips? I don't care, uncle, Jungkook stated coldly. I want him gone by tomorrow. Gyujin let out a slow breath. If Jungkook had already made up his mind, then there was no other choice for Bonho. His father owned the university, and one day, Jungkook himself would inherit it as the sole heir. Gyujin had no power to refuse him. That afternoon, Gyujin immediately summoned Bonho to his office. Without hesitation, he explained the lecturer's crime and handed him a termination letter. You made a grave mistake, Bonho, Gyujin said sternly. Yin is Jungkook's fiancé. By targeting her, you've brought this upon yourself. Bonho, who had been staring at the floor in shame, flinched at the revelation. His face paled in horror. Jungkook's fiancé? Had he known, he never would have dared to lay a finger on her. Everyone knew the power Jungkook held in this university. Congratulations, Gyujin continued coldly. You've dug your own grave. With this stain on your record, I doubt you'll find another job easily. Bonho trembled, his regret suffocating him. Please, sir, I was blinded by my impulses. I wasn't thinking. I'm truly sorry. Save your apologies, Gyujin cut him off sharply. You should be worrying about how you'll survive from now on. The news of Yin and Jungkook's engagement spread rapidly throughout the campus. Many couldn't believe that their most wanted bachelor was already engaged. The two had never been seen close, so how did they end up engaged? Various speculations about Yin began to circulate. Some made harsh comments claiming she wasn't worthy of Jungkook, while others speculated that their engagement was forced, assuming Yin's family was in debt to Jungkook's family and she was being used as repayment. A ridiculous assumption, considering both came from wealthy families. However, there were also those who supported their relationship, believing that Yin's character was a perfect match for Jungkook's dominant nature. The next day, whispers filled the cafeteria again as Yin and Jungkook arrived. Jungkook had deliberately invited Yin to eat together. He had something to do. He despised people making negative comments about Yin. Jungkook took Yin's hand in his sharp eyes scanning every student in the cafeteria. I need everyone's attention. His deep voice instantly silenced the noisy crowd. Beside him, Yin looked confused. She had no idea what Jungkook was about to do. The rumors you've heard about Yin being my fiancé are true, Jungkook declared, making everyone freeze in shock. Yet, they remained silent, waiting for what he would say next. Yin was just as surprised as the others. Wasn't Jungkook the one who wanted to keep their engagement a secret? So why was he exposing it now? Park Yin is my fiancé. I'm warning all of you. Do not harass her, spread false rumors, or talk badly about her. If you do, you'll deal with me directly. Stop your negative comments, or I swear, I'll rip your mouths apart with my own hands. Jungkook's cold voice sent a chilling silence through the entire cafeteria. No one dared to challenge him. Jungkook was not just anyone. He never made empty threats. A faint smirk appeared on his lips as he noticed the fear in their eyes. They understood his words weren't mere warnings. If anyone dared to mess with Yin, he would make them pay. Jungkook then turned to Yin, his expression softening as he smiled at her disbelief-stricken face. Let's go, baby. Yin was still frozen in shock, but she let Jungkook gently pull her along. As they walked away, the tense atmosphere in the cafeteria gradually returned to normal. That was insane. I was holding my breath the whole time. Jungkook is terrifying. You're right, I didn't even dare to lift my head. Yin is so lucky. We better stop gossiping about her. If Jungkook hears us again, I don't want to know what will happen. Jungkook and Yin sat in the car, both lost in their thoughts. The engine was still off, and they remained parked in the lot. Why were you so surprised? Jungkook finally broke the silence, unable to bear it any longer. Yin blinked, catching Jungkook's intense gaze from the corner of her eye. I just didn't expect you to announce our engagement in front of everyone, she answered softly. Jungkook frowned slightly. He reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder, gently turning her to face him. Why would you think that? Didn't you want to keep our engagement a secret? Jungkook furrowed his brows. Who said that? Yin fell silent. He had never actually said those words. She had assumed it herself. I just thought so, she admitted at last. Jungkook remained quiet, waiting for her to continue. In the beginning, you rejected the engagement. That meant you didn't like me. You didn't want this engagement. You only accepted it because you had no choice. Jungkook chuckled softly, shaking his head. Yin was overthinking too much, but it was his fault for never explaining things clearly to her. It's not that I didn't want this engagement, and it's not that I didn't like you. I just thought it was too soon. I wanted us to focus on our studies first. But after everything that happened, I have no regrets at all. I'm sorry for not treating you properly, to the point that you had to assume things on your own. His voice was gentle, sincere. A warm feeling bloomed in Yin's chest. Something new, something unfamiliar settled in her heart. For a moment, she was mesmerized by the man before her. You're not lying, right? Of course not. Why would I lie? Jungkook said casually. We still have about 2 years to date before we get married. The more I think about it, balancing college and dating doesn't sound so bad, he shrugged. Yin bit her lower lip. There was something she wanted to ask, but she hesitated. Summoning her courage, she finally voiced her thoughts. Jungkook, have you started liking me? Jungkook stared at her intently, not answering right away. His deep gaze sent her heart racing. What do you think? A subtle smirk curved his lips. Jungkook kept staring deeply at her, as if waiting for her reaction. Yin swallowed hard, her heart pounding uncontrollably. Why did the atmosphere suddenly change like this? You didn't answer, Yin finally said, her voice soft. Jungkook chuckled quietly, amused by how restless Yin seemed. I thought you were smart enough to figure it out yourself. Yin frowned, then let out a small sigh. Why do you have to answer with riddles like this? Jungkook leaned in slightly closer. If I answer now, it won't be fun anymore, he whispered teasingly. Yin turned her face away, feeling her cheeks heat up. Why was Jungkook suddenly acting like this? He used to be so cold and distant, but now he was treating her in a way that made her heart uneasy. Are you embarrassed? Jungkook asked, his face right near her ear. Yin quickly shook her head. No. Jungkook chuckled again, clearly not believing her. Alright, if you're still curious, I'll answer someday, but not today. Yin glanced at him briefly and huffed in annoyance. Whatever you say. Seeing Yin pout, Jungkook couldn't help but feel even more amused. Playfully, he pinched her cheek, making her pout even more as she whined at him. Jungkook, Yin swatted his arm lightly, but Jungkook just laughed. I like this expression on you, he teased, his eyes sparkling as he watched her sulk. It seemed like Yin was finally becoming more comfortable around him, and that only made it harder for Jungkook to hold himself back. His fondness for her was growing stronger, to the point where he could no longer resist the urge to get closer. Without thinking, he leaned in and pressed a kiss to her soft cheek. Yin's eyes widened in shock. She could feel the warmth of his lips lingering on her skin. Strangely, instead of feeling upset or pulling away, she almost found herself smiling. Maybe it was because she realized it was Jungkook, her fiance, and not just any man. But for some reason, Jungkook didn't stop there. As if something inside him had snapped, his eyes darkened as he gazed at her. And before she could fully process what was happening, he closed the distance between them and captured her lips in a deep kiss. Yin froze for a moment. Her heart pounded so fast that her thoughts scattered. Jungkook's lips were warm against hers, gentle yet firm, making her feel like she was melting under his touch. Her hands instinctively gripped his arm, feeling his strong muscles. Jungkook wasn't in a rush. Realizing that she wasn't resisting, Jungkook let himself sink deeper into the kiss. His lips moved against hers, unspoken emotions pouring into every movement. Their hearts pounded in sync, a rhythm filled with something undeniably intoxicating. Yin could feel just how tender Jungkook was with her, and it made her feel safe. Without realizing it, she found herself responding, her lips moving against his, making their moment even more intense. When a soft sigh escaped Yin's lips, Jungkook finally, reluctantly, pulled away. Silence filled the space between them as they stared at each other, breathless. His gaze landed on her flushed face, and a small smile tugged at his lips. Gently, he ran his thumb over her cheek. Are you still curious about my answer? He whispered, making Yin feel even more flustered. If you're still wondering, Jungkook leaned in again, his voice deep and teasing. Then I'll just have to kiss you again until you understand. Yin froze in place, her heart pounding so fast it echoed in her ears. Jungkook's gaze was deep, as if he was savoring the sight of her flushed face, completely unsure of what to do. Jungkook gave a small smile, his fingers still gently caressing her cheek. You still haven't answered me. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Yin bit her lower lip, trying to steady her breath, which was still erratic. How could Jungkook say something like that so casually after kissing her so deeply? Yin hesitated, searching for the right words. Jungkook leaned in closer, making Yin even more flustered. Yin swallowed, her face turning redder. You've really changed. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. Changed? You used to be cold, but now, you're like this. Yin lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze any longer. Jungkook let out a soft chuckle, his hand now trailing down to her chin, gently tilting her face back toward him. I haven't changed. I'm just finally showing you how I really feel. Yin remained silent, her eyes widening as she looked at him. Your feelings? Jungkook didn't answer immediately. His intense gaze locked onto hers before he let out a frustrated sigh. Eventually, he leaned back and prepared to start the car. Yin continued staring at him, her clear eyes full of curiosity, as if silently demanding an answer. Jungkook glanced at her. What? You haven't answered me. Hearing that, Jungkook sighed again, this time even more frustrated. The answer is obvious. Do you really think I would kiss you if I didn't have feelings for you? Yin finally smiled. This time, she was truly satisfied with his answer.